Hey guys, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. As we are back on the couch, you can probably guess that today I am coming to you with a book haul, and hopefully it is the only book haul you will see from me between now and June of 2021. I'm going to stop hauling and start viciously unhauling things. That's one of my main goals for 2021. So hopefully this is the last book haul you will see from me for a while. I have a lot of books here. I ordered some stuff online. I went by the used bookstore when I was unhauling things, and I did get some things for Christmas. So let's just get right into it because we're gonna be here for a while. So a couple of months ago, Shakespeare & Company, which is an English language bookstore in Paris and is potentially one of my favorite bookstores of all time. I really, really love Shakespeare & Company. They announced how much financial trouble they've been having this year due to being closed so often and for such a long amount of time. And so they asked if anybody would want to order from them online. And luckily, several thousand people, if I'm not mistaken, did order from them online. And so they are way behind on orders, but they have officially met their quota and actually done as well, I think, in the month of November as they did in the month of November last year when they weren't shut down, when they had a lot of foot traffic. So I ordered 3 books from them months ago, and they just arrived in the past few days. So the first book that I ordered from them was Andrew Roberts's Napoleon the Great. Here in the States, you will see this as just Napoleon, a life, and I think it has a really beautiful portrait of Napoleon on the cover. But this is my current read, and I am loving it. Adoring it. I have never read anything about Napoleon in my life. In fact, I know very little about him personally. I know very little about him at all professionally either. So this has just been a really wonderful read so far and really eye-opening. Shakespeare & Company will stamp your book for you if you ask, and they'll also spritz it with a little perfume, and they also always give you a little bookmark. So I am thoroughly enjoying this. This was kind of the theme for my haul from them, was French figures or people who spent some time in France. So I also picked up from them the letters of Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh is not French, but he spent quite a bit of time in Provence. I always dreamed of one day going to Provence and buying a copy of his letters and sitting and reading it in spaces that he would have seen. But that's probably a long way off now, so I decided to go ahead and get this. I am really excited about this because I was not really aware that so many letters of Van Gogh survived. So I'm really looking forward to this. In years past, I never recognized the genius of Van Gogh. In fact, I really did not like him, and I did not like his style at all. And in recent years, I've come to really, really enjoy him as an artist. So I think it's interesting just how your mind changes on things, but I really enjoy Van Gogh now. So I am looking forward to picking this up. I also got a biography of Joan of Arc by Helen Castor, and Helen Castor is one of my favorite historians, and I wish she would write more books. I just wish that she would publish more biographies of women in history, but I'm really looking forward to this. I've heard only amazing things about this. Joan of Arc is a very difficult figure to write a biography of, as you might can imagine, because a lot of what we know about Joan is kind of out of myth and legend, and she came from a very small town where there wasn't a lot of record being kept. So it's very difficult to know things about Joan for sure. So I'm excited to see what she does with it and how she discusses the eventual myth and legend of Joan of Arc. For Christmas, my mom got me the Oresteia translated by Percy Shelley and Medwin. So this was a Medwin-Shelley collaboration, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I've been wanting to reread the Oresteia for a long time, and so I am so excited to read it in Percy B. Shelley's translation, and the text is just wonderfully big, wonderfully big. We do have Percy Shelley's introduction and notes to this. I am just so excited about this. I am really, really thrilled to have his translation of the Oresteia. I was also given 3 of the absolutely stunning F. Scott Fitzgerald vintage penguins. So I got Tales from the Jazz Age, if you can see that. Gorgeous. I also, of course, got The Great Gatsby, which is stunning. It's in a little bit of a darker gold, almost a bronze. And then potentially my favorite of F. Scott Fitzgerald's works is The Beautiful and the Damned, which is the most stunning cover. I mean, genuinely beautiful. I've wanted these for a very long time. I've wanted to have this collection for years. So I'm really excited that I'm getting to start this collection. I really enjoy F. Scott Fitzgerald. He's one of the few more modern writers that I have really clicked with in terms of classics. I'm not big on 20th century classics unless they are in a certain style, and F. Scott Fitzgerald's style works for me. So I am really, really excited about these. So I did visit the used bookstore when I was unhauling, and I found an absolute gem. I am so excited about this. I got The Collector of Lives, which is a biography of Giorgio Vasari, the author of The Lives of the Artists, which is genuinely one of my favorite books of all time. I am obsessed with Giorgio Vasari. So I am really excited to have, I think, one of the only modern biographies of him out there. This is one that I am so excited about, and I think I will probably be picking it up fairly soon. I also picked up The Last Cavalier by Alexandre Dumas, which is a book that I had literally never heard of, and I am so excited about this. This is apparently the last in a series, which is unfortunate, but the first two in the series are not translated into English from what I understand, but this is about a cavalier in the years of Napoleon, and this was just recently discovered. I'm talking in the past 20 years, this manuscript was discovered and translated and actually even published. This was kind of a lost work of Alexandre Dumas, so I am really excited to get into this. I've picked up two works by Stendhal. So I got Rome, Naples, and Florence, which is in this really cute vintage edition. I don't know very much about Stendhal personally, except that he was a romantic writer. We can consider him a romantic writer. I am really excited to get into his writing. This is apparently his nonfiction work on Italy that he wrote as a journalist, if I'm not mistaken. So I am really looking forward to this, but I'm not quite sure what to expect from it. I also picked up The Charterhouse of Parma, which is another Napoleonic era set novel. A lot of people say you either like The Charterhouse of Parma or you like Stendhal's other book, The Red and the Black. You either like one or the other. I do have a copy of The Red and the Black, but I feel like Charterhouse of Parma is the one that I'm probably gonna like because it's set in Italy. Maybe. But as I am really into Napoleon right now, since I'm currently reading that biography, I am really looking forward to this. And I've heard it's just absolutely beautifully written and the characterization is incredible. I also picked up Seven Endless Forests by April Genevieve Tucholke. This is the sequel or companion novel to one of my favorite books of last year, which was The Boneless Mercies, which was a retelling of Beowulf with an all-female cast set in a Norse fantasy world, and I was obsessed with it. That's literally one of my favorite books of all time, not just one of my favorite books of last year. This is an Arthurian retelling set in the same world. Thank you. Thank you. That is exactly what I needed. I need King Arthur with Vikings. I just do. So I have very high hopes about this. I'm sure it will be a 5-star read because The Boneless Mercies was an easy 5-star read. I knew within the first chapter of The Boneless Mercies, I was going to rate that book 5 stars. And that's a very unique experience for me as a reader. So I feel sure that I will probably love this one just as much. I picked up 2 books to reward myself for finishing the first draft of my book, which is set in Renaissance Italy. So I decided to pick up 2 Renaissance Italian classics, one of which I'd heard of, one of which I had not. And so I'm really excited about the one I've heard nothing about, far more than the one that I have, because I've actually started reading it. The one that I have heard of is Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto. And I have started reading this and I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it. It feels very repetitive in nature, but Orlando Furioso is actually a kind of retelling of the Song of Rowland. Orlando is Rowland. So it's set during the time of Charlemagne. There's a lot of discussion about knights and chivalric tradition. And of course there are damsels in distress that need saving. I feel like as I get further into this that I will like it more, but So far, I have not been all that impressed with it, and so I feel very sad about that. This is apparently a very famous Italian classic. This is an Italian classic that Italians have to study in school, so I'm looking forward to it from that perspective, but the first couple of cantos really did not capture me. So this is an epic poem, but it has been translated into prose. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I historically have not liked that. I don't get on with poetry when it's translated into prose. I know a lot of people like that because they don't like to read poetry. I really do. And so I really would prefer to see it in verse, but I guess if it was in verse, it would be twice the length of this. So hopefully I will really enjoy this as I get further into it. The other Italian Renaissance classic that I picked up is The Liberation of Jerusalem by Torquato Tasso. These are both from the 1500s, and this was written after Orlando Furioso, and it is discussed as kind of being in that tradition and kind of taking a lot from Orlando Furioso, but this is set during the First Crusade, and I am so excited about it because apparently there are going to be female warriors. I cannot wait. And the First Crusade is one of my favorite historical events. I took a course on the Crusades when I was an undergrad, and I adored it. And I really, really enjoyed hearing about the First Crusade more than some of the others. And it's not the one that most people talk about. Most people talk about the Third Crusade with Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, who are really spectacular historical figures, which make that a really memorable period. The people of the First Crusade we don't remember quite as fondly, so I believe he takes a few of the big names of the First Crusade and intersperses them with some other fictional characters. Of course, the female warriors, I'm assuming, are fictional, but I am really looking forward to this. And this was translated into verse, and it's into rhyming verse, which is apparently how this poem is constructed in Italian. This is another kind of famous Italian classic, but it has fallen off in the modern era. It used to be extremely well studied, I believe in the 1800s, because I first heard about this through reading Lord Byron. So I am really excited to get into this one. I think I'm going to like this more than Orlando Furioso, but I want to read Orlando Furioso first if this is making a comment on that. I got a couple of retellings of classics, which I'm really excited about. I got Foul is Fair by Hannah Capin. This is a Macbeth retelling, focusing, I believe, primarily on the Lady Macbeth figure. And this apparently takes place at a girls' boarding school, if I'm not mistaken. I am really looking forward to seeing this perspective on Macbeth. I'm not sure whether or not I will like it because since ordering it, I have heard very mixed things about Foul is Fair when beforehand I had only heard really positive things about it. So I am excited about this, but Macbeth is not my favorite Shakespeare play. So I am also a little bit apprehensive about it. I also picked up Anna Kay by Jenny Lee, which is, of course, a retelling of Anna Karenina, also taking place, I believe, at kind of an Upper East Side boarding school. So I'm really looking forward to this. I do believe this is actually a series, so it's not going to tackle all of Anna Karenina in one book, which I think is probably the best way to do things. But I am really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a genuinely interesting portrayal of the novel. I think it's going to be a wonderful retelling. I'm really excited to see how this book deals with its subject matter. I've only heard extremely positive things about Anna Kay, so I'm really looking forward to this. I also picked up Roxana by Daniel Defoe. I read Journal of a Plague Year earlier this year by Daniel Defoe, and I actually really enjoyed his writing. So I'm thinking I will really enjoy this as well. I also have Moll Flanders, but a lot of people have said that Roxana is perhaps his best. This was his last written work, but I think it will be my next read from him. I also picked up The Bride of Lammermoor by Sir Walter Scott, and I know nothing about this except that Walter Scott wrote it. So I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have a fun time. Ivanhoe is one of my favorite classics of all time. This is apparently about dark prophecies and ominously symbolic events besetting the romance of a man and a woman, and I am really excited about that. I thoroughly enjoyed Ivanhoe in a way that I did not expect to, and I think is probably pretty unique in the modern day. A lot of people don't like Ivanhoe now because it is written in a very kind of old turn of phrase. I like what people might term the kind of outdated style of Walter Scott's language. I'm not sure if that will be present here. Ivanhoe was very much a stylistic choice. It was set in the Middle Ages, and I think he very much wanted you to feel as though you were in the Middle Ages and that you were reading maybe one of the older King Arthur poems or things like that. He really was playing with chivalric tradition, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm hopeful about this one because I've had such a good experience with Sir Walter Scott in the past, but I don't think this one will be as difficult to get into. I also picked up Marriage by Susan Ferrier because of Risha from For the Love of Classics. Risha read this over the summer, I believe, for Jane Austen July, and she raved about it. And so I definitely wanted to pick it up. This is a classic from around the time of Jane Austen and around the time of Sir Walter Scott, as a matter of fact. So this is kind of a romantic era novel. So that's, of course, kind of the trend here. I'm really into the romantics. So I'm excited to read this because apparently this takes place in Scotland. And I very rarely get to read classics set in Scotland. So that's partially why I wanted to pick up more of Sir Walter Scott, and it's also partially why I wanted to pick up Marriage by Susan Ferrier. But this is apparently about two sisters getting married, I believe, and they both have to kind of cross over the border and go into Scotland. So I'm really excited to see Scotland in a classic context. I was also able to pick up a copy of The Witches of St. Petersburg, and one of you guys recommended this to me, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And this is apparently historical fantasy set during the time right before the Russian Revolution, and it's about two women who were actual historical figures who were kind of into the occult, if I'm not mistaken. I believe this book will portray them as having actual magical powers, but I believe historically they had something to do with Rasputin or connected Rasputin to the Tsarina, to Alexandra. So I am really intrigued by this. I've heard a lot of good things, and when one of you guys recommended it to me, I said, that is right up my alley. So I am definitely going to pick this up probably very soon. It seems like a wonderful wintry read. I also picked up a copy of Why Read the Classics by Italo Calvino. Italo Calvino is a very famous Italian writer, and he writes more modern classics, and these are essays of his on very specific classics, and I believe some of them are lesser known, and I believe one of them is actually Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto. A very confusing title and name. His name and his title are very close together, but I believe Italo Calvino has an essay on that in here, so hopefully that will be encouraging to me. He has essays on classics from the ancient world all the way up to the modern day. So I am really looking forward to diving into this. I've heard a lot of good things about Italo Calvino in general. I think I'm going to like him. I do kind of struggle with more modern classics, but I think this essay collection will really connect with me. I also picked up Torn by Rowena Miller, and this is apparently a fantasy where magic is to do with sewing. So your magic comes from your sewing abilities, if I'm not mistaken, which just sounds fascinating. And it's also apparently a take on the French Revolution. So I believe this world is on the verge of revolution, and our main character's brother is getting caught up in it. And so she is very concerned that she will be dragged into it. I have heard mixed things about this, but I feel like this is my type of fantasy. I've heard it's very slow and politically driven, which is exactly what I enjoy in a fantasy novel. So I am really looking forward to picking this one up soon as well. I also found at the used bookstore The Perfect Prince by Anne Rowe, and this is a nonfiction book about Perkin Warbeck. And so Perkin Warbeck, if you are unfamiliar, was a pretender to the English throne in the late 1400s, in the 1490s. He claimed to be one of the princes in the Tower that disappeared in the reign of Richard III. Their bodies were never produced, so some people never thought they died. And he was one in a line of pretenders pretending to be one of these boys who somehow escaped from the Tower of London and went off and lived a whole life and is coming back to claim his crown. So This was a really, really tumultuous time in English history, and I am shocked it is not discussed more. If we're being truthful, Perkin Warbeck is probably one of the last major engagements in the Wars of the Roses, although for most people the Wars of the Roses end with the death of Richard III. So I am really excited to read this. I find Perkin Warbeck a very fascinating figure, and multiple people over the years have gone either way on him. Some people firmly believe, you know, he was a pretender. He was not who he said he was. He was an actor. And other people believe it's a possibility that he actually was Richard, Duke of York, one of the princes in the Tower. So I am really looking forward to reading this. I think I will probably really enjoy it. Last but not least, I picked up Belinda by Maria Edgeworth, a very beat up copy of Belinda by Maria Edgeworth. But this is also an earlier classic than the Victorian period. I believe this came out around 1800 or even in the 1700s. And that's a period of classics that I would really like to get into this year. I would like to read more out of my comfort zone, but this I think is also got some shades of Jane Austen, but I have a good feeling about Maria Edgeworth. I think that she is a little bit satirical, and I think she also likes to kind of comment on things that are going on socially during her day. So I know she wrote a book and included a character a little bit like Mary Wollstonecraft. So I am just excited about this one. I've heard Belinda is her best. And if you have read any of hers, please let me know your opinion down below. I would love to know whether or not you like her, because I don't hear her name mentioned very often. So those are all of the books that I have picked up recently. I would love to know what you've been hauling, and I would love to know if you have read any of these or if any of these are on your list. But that's going to be all from me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.